in some ways, I don't think of us as being travel tech. In a lot of ways, travel tech would be like the OTAs, which tend to be, in my personal opinion, kind of like feeding all the problems with the travel industry. They're aggregating, they're slashing margins. They're taking the money away from the people actually delivering the experiences. They're driving you to the top selling products, which means that people go to the same places instead of scattering out and having really diverse experiences. So to me, that's what's kind of often called travel tech. It tends to be high volume, and I think a little bit aggressive. So when we started YouLi, we very specifically were focused on sort of the niche experience world. And, yay, it turns out that's a thing that people really value. So, we've been sort of riding that trend. In some ways, you might call us res tech, because you can book on the platform, register, complete forms, stuff like that. So sometimes we get categorized like that. But ultimately, I think of us as being B2B SaaS. So we're software as a service, right? So, when I built YouLi, I had been working for a company that sold to enterprises, right? Like if you weren't Victoria's Secret, you couldn't afford our software, right? And it's like, okay, well, the people that I see creating a lot of amazing value in the world aren't up there. They're, running 10 trips a year or 20 trips a year. And so I wanted to make enterprise quality software accessible to people who couldn't pay those bigger prices. And so SaaS is the way to do that, right? And so that's what we set out to do. We now support people through their whole journey.
Hi, everyone. We're back with another episode of The Tourpreneur, and I'm here with Jen Fein, who I'm very excited to talk with today. Jen is co-founder of YouLi, which many of you probably already know. Jen is very active in our Facebook group, and I bump into her often at events. I know she's all over the place. She works as head of product and CEO, and YouLi is one of our sponsors for our very first civil conference. I'm very excited to see the team there. And we've been using YouLi, actually, so I'm very intimate with the product from a user standpoint. Our whole conference website has been through YouLi, so it's been really fun to work with the team and go through the, all the questions and answers that the website has and figure it out for myself and, try and problem solve them and be like, I just have to email customer support. I can't figure it out. So I am that client.
And what we're here for.
Yeah, good. Because it's always user error in the end, right? Always very politely, someone will point out that I have missed something or done a step. But I appreciate their patience. And yeah, as I said, I met Jen for the first time at a conference, which was the Women in Travel Summit, which maybe we'll circle back to because I constantly am promoting this conference for tour operators. I don't know that we're going to do that. Well, let's see this. I like to think we'll partner with them again this year. I haven't reached out to them yet. It will be in Salt Lake City in 2024. So hopefully we'll partner with them again. We'll get a little discount again, and everyone should go. How did you like WITS? Was it your first time?
Yeah, that was my first time. It was. I thought it was a great event.
Yeah.
They picked great destinations. It was Puerto Rico last time, so that was just in May, right? Like that was not that long ago.
It just happened. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely love the wonderful team. She's wonderful. So, Marissa, Beth, they're phenomenal event coordinators. So highly recommend check it out if it's the right fit for your business. You will meet a lot of people. I'd say that's the only thing for me is like there were all these people and I was like, there's not enough time.
So many people. Yeah, they draw a huge crowd. Yeah. It's a fun crowd. It's a really fun crowd.
Yeah, but absolutely. But I also made some really wonderful connections as well. And you do that. You sort of end up, because it's so big, you sort of like end up with your people,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So Jen, for those of us who aren't as familiar, I am very curious to hear how you came to travel. Was it through tech? Was it through travel and then you went into tech? How did you get here?
Yeah. Well, so my background is that I'm a geek. So computer software engineer. And I actually worked for an email marketing company out of New York called Cheetah Mail. anybody who's
From
the
being
email world.
Yes.
Yeah, we were the first platform that like actually sent email at scale. We sent for Yahoo, we sent for American Express, sent for Victoria's Secret. So that's where I learned how to build large scale, well, in that case, marketing platform. And as that kind of evolved, and I was watching that progression of people who were sending paper mail converting to sending email. So I watched that sort of maturation of businesses from the sort of offline to the online marketing world. And that was a huge education in a lot of different ways. And then I sort of, got the travel bug and wanted to have an international experience. So I was transferred actually to their Asia Pacific division because Australia and China were growing a lot. So I transferred out from there, and I spent 4 years basically on a plane all over Asia Pacific, meeting with all the teams, rolling out products throughout Asia Pacific. And so I learned never to book through certain travel agencies because I would end up in middle seats. And I was like, I got permission to book my own travel. Like I had to get an exception in the corporate world, right? And then I was in Japan for one of my work trips. I was like, hey guys, I'm in Japan for the week and I'm going to go do Mount Fuji. And so who wants to come with me? And then all of a sudden I had 9 friends showing up and they were all like, where am I supposed to be? Who's coming in? Blah, blah, blah. I sent them this beautiful Word document that had all the details in it and they refused to read it. And so I realized like, oh, they want something slightly different than what I think of as the right information. And so that's where the idea for YouLi was born, in terms of like what the traveler sees and what the planner sees are different, right? It's the same information, but just structured differently. There's more data for the planner, and there's just like, where do I need to be? How much does it cost? What do I need to do? Right? That's all they want to know.
Fascinating. Okay, so YouLi came out of this need to create a template almost to like solve the challenge for tour operators that people don't read ever, right? They don't read
large documents. No.
Okay, very interesting. And so that is really where it started, of having that it's an itinerary line, you can build it, you can customize it, but that you're kind of engaging them in the right direction.
Yeah, and so these are actually, and this comes out of my experience building an email marketing platform. So you set up your email template, but you personalize it, right? And then you do dynamic content, right? So your ladies are getting, the tops, and your guys are getting the hot new sneakers, right? It's the same email template, but the products are different based on who you're showing it to. So same idea here, which is, okay, well, my teachers see an itinerary that is maybe a little bit more detailed than my students who are on the trip see. And so we do all that for you based off the template that you set up and then the data that you enter, like a little trip CRM. It's like, okay, Mary is the teacher, Christopher is the student. And then you can see them. So you can preview, like, what's Mary going to see? What's Christopher going to see, to make sure that it looks the way you want it to. But then we auto-generate those traveler portals for you and make those really accessible. And so that's what the TourpreneurConnect attendees are experiencing, is their own personalized portals and their own personalized schedules if they have, if they've opted in and out of different things in that schedule.
And because I've created it as best I can, they're all seeing the same thing. So if you're watching this before Seville, don't get excited that you're going to have a personal, different curated for you. Everyone's getting the same one, but it is pretty. It is pretty.
Well, and actually, this is a really good point, and this is the thing about technology. And every business is at a different level, and we had this with our email marketing as well. It's like some clients, it's like they just personalize the emails with first name, and that was all they could manage. It was a big lift to do dynamic content based on gender profiles and products that were selling well. And like, that's a big project. And so not all companies need to do that. Not all companies are sophisticated enough to do that. But, having a tech platform that you can kind of grow into. So maybe next year, TourpreneurConnect 2.0 is going to have like, different tracks, and based on what kind of tour operator you are, or maybe based on what region you're coming from or something, they're going to have slightly different content. But, since the tool has that option, it gives you the flexibility to be creative. And if you have the vision for it and the resources for it, then you can execute it.
Jen, can you give just a basic of what YouLi is and does, sort of the tagline? I really probably just so we have context as we move forward in our conversation, just people know exactly what the platform is.
Yeah, so YouLi is a platform that powers specifically group travel businesses, and it empowers the planners of trips to create itineraries, pricing and booking pages, and tasks, forms, and documents in one traveler portal. So it sort of solves all your problems if you operate primarily as a group travel business. Like, it becomes the heart of your business. And then we integrate with your accounting platform, your CRM, whatever downstream systems that you need us to talk to. And we basically make it so that your travelers have the best kind of digital customer experience with your brand before they have the most amazing offline travel experience with your brand. So we especially find that companies who understand the importance of setting that sort of brand tone before the trip, so it's not just a bunch of emails in the inbox that they didn't read, and it becomes this beautiful, continuous, interactive traveler portal leading up to their trip.
Yeah, lovely. You've already kind of hinted to a few of these groups already, but I think it's so interesting that you're getting such a diverse section of the travel industry. And I'm curious who you're seeing, like what that landscape looks like. Like, we've talked about student travel, but I know there are content creators out there. I know there are retreats being run by coaches who are running their own retreats. Yep. There are tour guides who are running their own programs and going through you. What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, we have a partnership with Wanderlust Entrepreneur. If you've gone through or going through her amazing training program, so Dr. Sherry will teach you how to run profitable retreats. So absolutely recommend her Blueprint program. And then you can subscribe to our Wanderlust Entrepreneur memberships, which are very specialized for that retreat world. So check that out if you're a retreat or coach person, especially if you're only running like one retreat a year, right? And that's the thing, is like, especially if you're new to it or if you're really, really specialized, you're probably not going to run very many right away. And so we do offer those plans that get you started there. And then we are also partnering with the Transformational Travel Council, and those companies come in all shapes and sizes. And I actually just traveled with one of them, walking mentorship in Spain. We did the Camino with them, and can't recommend them enough just from a personal level. I find travel transformational just as a general rule, and they just kind of like took it to the next level. So if you're looking for an opportunity to really disconnect, but then reconnect with what matters to you in a really safe and structured way while you're like walking through the Spanish countryside and like having amazing Spanish food along the way, then walking mentorship is for you. And so that's so specialized, right? And so I think one of the trends that we do see, regardless of whether you're a retreat, tour operator, trips, that kind of thing, you're specialized. You're not just a tour of the Camino. Like, sure, I mean, you can walk the Camino by yourself, right? But walking mentorships gives you a particular product that you can only get with them. And because they create an experience for you that is quite unique. And every group is unique. They were very clear about that. They're like, this is a once in a lifetime thing that has been created because of the people that have gone with you and the experiences that you've shared together, right? And so, yeah, I think that's a bit of my why in terms of the travel. Like, I love to see those kinds of experiences in the world, because the more connected we are to who we are and the less stressed we are, the better decisions we make, the more we can care for the people in our lives,
Very much agree. And I think this is trending. Like, I'm seeing more and more of this. I'm seeing, as I know larger multi-day, more traditional operators are maybe struggling to get a demographic that's younger that wouldn't typically take a group tour, that sees group tours as something, that their parents or their aunts do, right? I'm seeing those same customers go instead on a content creator trip and paying like for luxury prices, like people are very, very eager for something that's different. And I think you're seeing a lot of that in your sphere.
Well, I think I saw in one of your newsletters, Kentucky is rebranding them social tours from group tours. So I think that's
Kentucky is an interesting example, right? Because they are for a young market. So there is a market, but I think that's still considered budget, right? Kentucky, so much is added on. You have the base price and then all the activities are added. So people look at that as a budget way. I mean, Intrepid, they have higher levels, right? But it is a more budget adventure-rated travel. You're expecting to rough it a little bit more. And I just
we have seen a lot of that sort of luxury end of it. So, we have clients like Insider Expeditions. They actually run tours white labeled for their kind of influencers or clients. And so that's really interesting to see, like, some of those trips can be $12,000 a person, right, for a 7-day tour. So yeah, absolutely, luxury level, but it's a group trip, right? But people don't see that as a negative in the context. Like, if you structured your group trip properly, the group is part of the product, right? Like the trip that I just did in Spain, like if it had just been me and the guide, it would have been like, nice, but not nearly the same kind of experience that we had. So I think it's really interesting to see them kind of rebranding it. And that we've struggled with that as well, just because we say we power group travel. And it's like, we like to think we're kind of moving past to like 50 people on a bus is what group travel is like. But sometimes people still kind of have that in their heads. And it's like, no, I mean, we're talking like 12 people, 8 people, sometimes up to 20 kind of thing. Solo female travelers, a client of ours, there's tons of those kinds of companies that specialize in making it safe and fun for women to travel all over the place, even if you don't have a travel buddy. So, yeah, I think group travel's great. I mean, obviously I'm slightly biased, but I think, I think other people are catching on as well.
And it's almost this new version of group travel, right? I think the 50-person bus, we have a while until that's no longer in demand. I think there's going to be customer for that a while yet, but even there, like it's hard to describe the value, I think, of group travel sometimes. Like, as someone who has family members and friends who don't work in travel, they see the prices of a trip on Atlas Obscura and they're like, wow, it's so expensive. But it's like, okay, but think about it. If you were to do this yourself, the cost of the transportation, the cost of the private cooking experience, whatever it is, that's been divided by 10 people. And so it's really like it would be astronomical, the cost to do it by yourself. But that's a very hard pitch when all the activities are things you could theoretically figure out yourself. So that's why I think we're seeing this demand for, or at least this rise in the market of a demand for something that seems more unique, whether or not it is, right? Whether or not you could figure it out yourself. It's the ease, access I couldn't access. And then to your point, the people who do it well are pitching that group as the value. It's like, and you're traveling with like-minded travelers for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. And so I think at the small group level, that's absolutely like the group is the product. And so, you're going to make friends, sometimes friends for life on some of those solo female traveler trips, right? Because you're in these really incredible experiences together. But then we also have the other end of that, which is events. So this is something that we've seen we've actually gotten pushed into that. So we started with retreats and trips and tours and things, and then we started getting events on the platform. Like, that's interesting. So some of them are classic conferences like TourpreneurConnect, but some of them are actually just 300-person tours effectively, right? Like, think about it, right? And it's basically 4 days in Colombia centered around a concert, right? Like, you're coming for the long weekend to see this DJ, performer, whatever it is, but you're also going to get a tour of Colombia while you're there. And so you're you're booking in with 300 other people because, it's like a music festival that you're going to or something like that. And so, it kind of doesn't matter that you're going with 300 people because you're going to a place that's going to have like thousands of them anyway, in some cases. So I find this really fascinating because each one of them is completely unique. So this is sometimes different than maybe a tour operator would think of, like, okay, I need to figure out my product and I need to be able to like deliver a consistent product every single time. Whereas these event tour companies have basically said, we figured out the way to structure these so that we know how to operationalize it, but every single one is unique. Unique destination, unique sort of event that it's centered around. And then because they're selling to such a large number of people, they only need to run like 4 or 5 a year to make the same money that you might get from running 12 or 50.
Right. This is very interesting to me because I feel like there's such a beautiful middle ground that could be created where you have, the tour, the travel tour, and then you have the conference or the event. And then for those two to merge and take things from each other and, take the structure of the group tour and all the amenities and how everything's included. And that's so nice. You show up and everything's been taken care of. Yes. But then to add that uniqueness and that, like, it's only going to happen this one time. And so there's an urgency in selling that, which is really interesting as well.
Yeah. And I think that if you can figure that out in terms of, if you know how to structure an event, right? And I do think event planning is a particular skill, right? Yes. But I think being able to merge those two things creates a very unique thing. So yeah, I've been really impressed watching customers do this. And that's partly what sort of pushed our platform to develop more functionality, like you guys are exploring now. So we have like book a meeting functionality, and profiles. So you can actually allow people to publish information about themselves to other members of the group, which is typically not done in a tour. But we are starting to find, especially with some of the smaller, sort of niche operators, they're starting to do that with their smaller groups too. So not just on the conference side. So we are finding sort of like the conference features kind of filtering back in and getting picked up by the tour operators as well. So I'm really fascinating to see that, especially like, talking about sort of the tech scene. We specifically thought we were just travel tech, and then we got pushed into event tech by our customers, even though, like, if you survey the market, you're like, oh, there's too many event platforms. Why would we even enter that space? And then it's like, oh, well, apparently because there's this new kind of, event category that is more like a tour than it is like your classic events, which the other platforms are serving. And so there's a space for us to sort of serve this emerging events tours. I feel like I need to come up with event tour.
I mean, experiences, right? These are all experiences at the end of the day. And I think this makes so much sense because, when you look at your competitor analysis, for example, very often tour operators are looking at other tour companies. And it's like, that is not necessarily your only competitor. Your competitor are the concerts, the music festivals, the other things that people could be doing with their time.
Well, and so if you merge those two things together, it's like you can go, you can go to I think the most recent one was go to Egypt and watch a concert at the pyramids, right?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
You can do both, right?
Exactly.
And so you satisfy two very, like, yes, I want both of those experiences and I can get them in one, and it changes the price dynamic for sure. So that's definitely something to look into in terms of that. And then we do find with those larger events, it often ends up being a lot about inventory management. So like, because they block out large hotel room blocks. And then, so that's part of what we do is make sure that you don't oversell your different room types. And so that's kind of that sort of conference-y kind of thing of like the room block concept. But, that's a great way to kind of give a pretty luxury experience, because if you're booking out, like we have some clients who like go book out a whole resort. Wow. Like you can get a much better price for that So you're giving a very luxury experience, but again, but you're dividing it across a large number of people. So to your point about you get a lot more than you get a lot more just booking it directly.
And it doesn't have to take away from the intimacy, I think. Like, yes, a small group tour, there is a lot of special value in that, but it's not to say that you can't create special moments of intimacy with a huge crowd. You could definitely.
Oh, absolutely. I have every confidence you guys are going to do that in Sevilla.
Yeah, well, we'll all see. Well, if you're listening to this like later on, and you notice like a panic to my voice, it's that we're a month out from Seville, so there's a lot of emotions. But yeah, no, it is an interesting challenge, right? Because it's how do you take something that's traditional, like a conference, and make it a little bit more interesting and break the script a little bit, which we love to do for Tourpreneur.
Make it an experience.
Yeah. So all these different types of product, right, that you're seeing, what data are you seeing across all of these clients that's the same? Is there any sort of commonality amongst their customers, where they're coming from, things like that?
So just kind of looking back over the last 90 days in our stats, so we integrate with Google Analytics with their e-commerce module, so we can kind of see, where are customers coming from kind of across our client base. And so the good news is that conversions are up 30% for the last 90 days, which we really love to see.
Yeah.
We do recognize, different operators are, slowing down or speeding up and things like that. But just overall, our current trend is definitely on the way up. Part of that for us, I think, is in the student travel space, because we've definitely seen that that's sort of because it was so pent up for so long. There's a lot of demand there, and a lot of sort of government funded programs that just need to go. So despite all the economic issues that are kind of happening, those programs are still running. So if you're thinking about moving into the student travel space,
hot tip.
Definitely recommend. And then within that, one of the things that we've seen just on the acquisition side of it, email. Like I not just because I built an email marketing platform in my day, but email was always the thing. Like when I was working at Cheetah Mail, it was like, this is going to be the email killer. This is going to be the email killer. There was always something that was going to kill email as the marketing channel. Email is still like far and away in the top 3 for our clients in terms of conversion rate. So build your email list and send people emails. And also in that category is, of course, emails that come from our platform. So we have a thing called register to pay. So you can express your interest without booking. So you can kind of like get people in, and then they're like, oh, I'm not sure yet. And then we send them little messages automatically, and then they pay. That's great. So definitely email. Organic search is up there, kind of like 4 or 5. Social, always a little bit lower. So we don't see organic social converting directly. So that's why it's like, to me, organic social is the way to get them to your website, to get them on your email list, so you can send them email, so that then they convert by email, right? So that's
very top of the funnel marketing.
That's how you need to think about social. Don't think about it as your conversion.
I agree.
And we've been seeing a lot of clients starting to have more success with affiliates. So I think, if you're working with a creator who just wants to recommend you, you can actually do a track by affiliate, and you can give them a link, and then they can sort of recommend you. So even if you're not necessarily partnering directly or them coming on one of your tours, you can just have them be a classic affiliate, right? So that's been more and more popular. So we do recommend that one, but it's, it's not the top one, but it definitely has an impact, especially if you invest time in it. And then my final tip from our acquisition data is paid search is probably not where you want to invest your funds. We haven't seen it like make a difference. I think that's because our clients are very specialized. And I think the paid search, is much more of a like, buy these red shoes. Hey, that book you were looking at, that kind of thing. They're sort of smaller purchases. Oftentimes our clients are selling $3,000, $5,000 trips. are you going to click and buy something that expensive from an ad? Probably not. Now, you could use ads again as a way of sort of like top of funnel, just to kind of get onto your email list.
Right.
So, but as a direct conversion tool, so my advice is don't run out, dump a bunch of money into paid search and expect that to turn into bookings. At least not if you're in the sort of specialized experiential group travel space.
That's so interesting. I think email marketing is really having a golden time at the moment. Like even this idea of, I mean, I'm on so many newsletters at this point through, Substack or Beehive or all these other, like everyone's getting into the newsletter game, which I just, as a side note, totally fascinated by. I'm on all these newsletters about newsletters because I think it's so interesting. Like people are monetizing just the newsletter. But there is something intimate about it. Like these newsletters that I anonymously subscribe to, like they're meant to be very interactive. So there's polls and they want you to reply because it helps their click-through rates and their response rates, and they'll reply back to you. So you do start to feel like you have this relationship, whereas all it is an email. Some person is like writing their thoughts once a week, and some of them are more valuable than others. But I just think it's really interesting. That's kind of where we're at. So I think people are becoming used to signing up for newsletters as a way to get to know. And so when you get to know someone in that way, then you are going to buy, right? Because it is now you have this relationship, you have this trust, you feel like you know this brand really well. And I think that's really interesting that you're seeing the conversions come through the email list.
Yeah, and I think that's the intimacy. That's it's because you feel like you know them, you feel like you can trust your travel, your time, your money with this person because you're like, oh, I know this person now. I know what kind of experience I'm going to get from this person, from this group. And I think that's to me a beautiful thing. Like, and I hope this happens across the board where we shift away from, oh, I don't care, I just need to see the Eiffel Tower. It's like, I mean, but is that really the only reason you've gone to Paris? Like, and I think more and more people are like, no, I feel like I need more than that. And so then it does matter who you travel with. And it isn't just the cheapest ticket to get into the thing. It is, what is the best experience that I can get to make the most of the time? Especially because flights are so expensive now. So it's like,
yeah. I also think there's such an oversaturation. Like, I don't have the stats on this, but in my view, the average customer is going to buy a tour, is going to get your guide. Like, they don't have a sense that you can book directly through these companies or have this relationship. So I think when they do fall upon that through the top of funnel stuff like social media, that they're like, oh, wow, how incredible that I have found this one company and this one brand. And it's always interesting when you talk to these smaller brands, like how their customers found them. Right. And it's always kind of random or through word of mouth. But once they find them, they're very loyal. And there are these companies that are running, all these different trips and always adding new trips, which doesn't seem like the best model financially, but they're filling it with their email list. So even if they have under 500 people, let's say, on the email list, if they're running 10 tours a year, they could easily fill those tours. And if the pricing is right, then they're making a profit, right? So then it makes it makes financial sense for them to create new content to get these repeat customers back. And now your customer value is so much higher.
Yeah. Well, at the end of our Spain trip and the last dinner, we were discussing how we were going to do a reunion next year. Mm-hmm. We're like already planning. We're like, we need to see all of each other again. And so we're like, Zhao, you're going to run a tour for us next year. Right? It's like, that's the business model that you want, right? Where your clients are sort of demanding to travel with you again, forcing you to run another extra tour.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of going on the other side of this coin, because we've been talking a lot about the travel business, travel tech, which I'm going to say with air quotes almost, because I feel like that phrase is used so often. The travel tech space is busy. It's loud. I'm tangentially involved in it, and that, I'm surrounded by it and I hear it all the time. And, I'm on a Slack with the Tourpreneur team. So Peter's always going off and talking about these different travel tech but for me, from my outside layperson view, I'm hearing there's so much funding. That's why there are all these companies. But then, all these companies, they're crashing and burning because the funding has run out. And it seems like there's a new company popping up each week doing different things and all under this umbrella of travel tech. And a lot of the people also, again, from my outside view, seem to not be from the travel world. They're coming in from other areas. So my question is, how that landscape looks from your point of view in terms of, how robust this travel tech industry is. And then YouLi seems to be doing great. So then what's your secret?
Well, first of all, I in some ways, I don't think of us as being travel tech. In a lot of ways, travel tech would be like the OTAs, which tend to be, in my personal opinion, kind of like feeding all the problems with the travel industry. They're aggregating, they're slashing margins. They're taking the money away from the people actually delivering the experiences. They're driving you to the top selling products, which means that people go to the same places instead of scattering out and having really diverse experiences. So to me, that's what's kind of often called travel tech. It tends to be high volume, and I think a little bit aggressive. So when we started YouLi, we very specifically were focused on sort of the niche experience world. And, yay, it turns out that's a thing that people really value. So, we've been sort of riding that trend. In some ways, you might call us res tech, because you can book on the platform, register, complete forms, stuff like that. So sometimes we get categorized like that. But ultimately, I think of us as being B2B SaaS. So we're software as a service, right? So, when I built YouLi, I had been working for a company that sold to enterprises, right? Like if you weren't Victoria's Secret, you couldn't afford our software, right? And it's like, okay, well, the people that I see creating a lot of amazing value in the world aren't up there. They're, running 10 trips a year, 20 trips a year. And so I wanted to make enterprise quality software accessible to people who couldn't pay those bigger prices. And so SaaS is the way to do that, right? And so that's what we set out to do. We now support people through their whole journey as they grow as big as they want to get with us. And we do actually have an enterprise level product because we've found that some people want to completely white label everything. And so then it's our, highly customizable, very white labeled version of the YouLi platform. So that's where, that's one way that we sort of think of ourselves differently and we talk to our customers differently. And we're less volume oriented. And, yes, we love like 30% conversion growth, like, yay. Obviously that matters, but we also care that we are supporting entrepreneurs to launch their businesses. We're supporting old school businesses that are 30 years old to transform their operations to finally become digital, right? We like those success stories. Like, I think that's kind of what we're in it for. And my experience selling in that space is that it takes time. It is not a fast growth model. And so your classic VC funding model is bring in $5 million and just grow, right? Get on the phone, call people, make them buy your product. They might not love it, but they'll probably stick because what can they do? Kind of like it. That's kind of the model. And look, I played my game back in New York and kind of grow big, grow fast kind of thing. And I just decided, no, I want to build a company that actually services and cares about the companies that are on the platform, and we'll get as big as we get. And so we don't have VC investors that are pushing us to sort of grow fast or die. And so that's why we survived the pandemic. And that's why we continue to grow through these challenging times, because our customers are loyal in the same way that their travelers are loyal. Like, we try to very much align our values with the values of our clients. So,
yeah, I love that.
I like to keep that how we're
steady, run race. I like that. I like a success story of building something slowly and intentionally and being flexible about the definition of success in a way, right?
Hmm.
That's interesting. So I'm curious, in this world, like you're saying, success of your clients, I get the impression a lot of them grow with you, that they come in and they're not really sure what they're wanting to. Before this call, we talked about how so many people are still using paper and pen to do things, and you've kind of gotten them out of that. But are there any, like, what are you seeing in terms of common things that a lot of your clients are missing out on, or that operators could do? Automation is such a buzzword as well right now, but what are some things that like people could be doing and most of them aren't?
Love automation. Yes. Right. I live and breathe it every day. I set it up in Azure. I set it up in a HubSpot. I set it up in Zapier. I'm that kind of annoying person. But we recognize that our clients are, they're probably going to pick one automation tool and not necessarily want to or need to have multiple sort of automations going on. And in some cases, it can cause them a lot of anxiety because automation's amazing if you know what you're doing. It is a nightmare if you don't understand the power of it, right? Because it's kind of like kind of like a pressure hose, right? It's just like, if and if you know, then great. It's this powerful, powerful thing. And so I think automation should always start with, what are you trying to achieve? What is the problem in your business right now? Is it, I spend all my time chasing people to pay after the deposit and pay their balance. And I have to call them. I feel awful when I call them. Automation,
That's a great example.
So YouLi does that. Lots of platforms do that. Please automate that out of your life, right? But if the idea of using AI to write your emails makes you sick and you think that that's just not what, customer service looks like, then don't do it, right? And I think it's making sure that the technology you bring into your business, again, is aligned to your values, solves a problem for you, and most importantly, don't do it all at once. So slowly, intentionally build your tech stack, and find partners that are going to grow that with you. So be careful about getting a cheap developer to throw something together for you. It will fall apart. You won't know how to fix it, right? So if you're building a long-term business, create long-term partnerships with the right kinds of suppliers within the tech space. So Katie Broadhurst, I strongly recommend. She's an online business manager. There are many of these out there as well. They will come in, they'll look at your business, they'll tell you what tools you should be adopting and help you operationalize that. They can either build it for you or just consult and tell you what they recommend. So if you know you need automation, but you're just terrified to even start the process and you feel overwhelmed, first find an OBM, get to know them, make sure you trust them. They will be expensive if they're any good. They will be worth every penny because they're independent, right? Like their job is to improve your experience. Wow. So that's actually, so there you go. That's my automation tip is find an OBM. If you don't know what you're doing, go find an OBM.
Yeah. And it's operational business manager.
Online business manager.
Sorry, online business manager. No. Online business manager. No, because I'm not familiar with that term. That's really interesting. And that's a really great tip. So it's almost like invest to do it right and to get the right advice. And then I'm also hearing no automation just for automation's sake. Like it should work for you and solve actual challenges.
And roll it out and test it. And then decide if you're going to, so maybe do it for one trip. Like, especially if you're going to introduce a mobile app into the experience. So YouLi includes a mobile app. Some customers will value it, some won't. Before you create an operational nightmare of like turning it on for everyone and then, hundreds of complaints come back because why do I have to download an app, whatever. Run it on one tour and get specific feedback and then go, oh, great, they liked it. Let me do it for everyone. Or, oh, they found no value in that. Let me drop that off my list. Right. And that's the other thing is like letting go of stuff. Like if the app doesn't serve your purposes, it's okay to say, no, I don't need it. So that giving yourself permission to take on the technology that works for you and serves your business, and then doing it kind of bit by bit. We're working with a very forward-thinking company in student travel, Reho in Australia, and Bianca is one of the partners there. She's got so many amazing ideas, and she wants to automate everything, and I absolutely adore her because she wants like everything automated, and she's right, and that's where her business is going to get to. But she's also recognizing, she's got a team. She's got to bring them along for the ride. She's got customers. She needs to bring them along for the ride. And so it's about, working with the right tech partner as well to roll those things out slowly. So that's the other thing when you're looking at a platform, picking one that you can get started with and grow into, because platform migrations suck. So try not to start on something that's going to constrain your growth if you plan on growth. So, most SaaS platforms will support you on that, but just double check, like, will they let you go where you need to and be priced at that higher end at a price that you think you can afford. So
that's a really great tip. That's very, very, very useful. And I'm hearing another theme throughout is flexibility. Right, this flexibility to allow yourself to grow as needed and being aware of what you're going to need in the future, being forward-thinking enough, but understanding you're going to need to change things along the way. And then it might change. Your definition of success might change halfway through, and so you have to amend.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and we've seen that with so many different clients. And, people had to pivot during the pandemic. And, I to this day am amazed at how many operators and event organizers, made it to the other side. I think that's just a huge testament to everyone's ability to be flexible and get through those tough times. So I think if you're one of those, like, you can absolutely get through a digital transformation. So no worries. Give us a call.
You made it for the pandemic. You made it through the pandemic. You can get away from your manual spreadsheets and pen and paper.
That's right. Yeah, because, in some ways, you ask sort of like, what does YouLi do? With the clients who really work with us as partners, we do a digital transformation for their business. And it can often take 1 to 2 years to sort of do a full digital transformation. But we often launch in 1 to 3 months, depending on, how many trips they want to launch with us. So we are very much of the mind that, like, get immediate value and then iterate from there. So even if you have an established business, you don't have to migrate everything. Like, you can keep your existing. So oftentimes we see customers sort of any trips that are already fully booked, they just keep it on the old process. And then anything that they're still taking bookings, that's what they move on to the platform. And so that reduces the amount of sort of integration work and allows you to get going faster, and allows you to get more benefit from the new technology because you're using more of that functionality right away. So there's little things like that. And again, if you find the right tech partner, they will be giving you tips like that. So if the tech partner that you're talking to is not sort of trying to help you find the fastest way to get value out of their software, that's no good, right? And the good ones will, and we're not the only ones out there, absolutely. And we're not the right one for every company. So it's very important that you find a platform that is aligned to your needs.
Yes, doubly agree. Jen, I have one more question for you. And this is purely out of my own curiosity, but I think it's worth mentioning that so far in my experience with YouLi, every single person on your team has been a female, at least as much as I've interacted with. And I find that very rare in travel. I imagine it's very rare in tech. So I'm just curious, was that intentional? Has it organically happened? How did that come to be?
A little bit of both. So my original founder was actually a tech guy, but he decided that he didn't want that sort of, bootstrapped startup experience. And so he didn't continue on the journey with me. And instead I found 2 amazing co-founders, Bron, who's our CTO and is still with us, and Caitlin, who's our original designer, who did transition out of the team. But without them, there's no way I could have created what YouLi is today. And probably that all came out of the fact that I was actually based in a female founder co-working space at the time in Australia.
Yeah, it was very specific. Yeah.
It was kind of this time when there was so it was sort of a 2016, 2017 time period. And it's One Roof is it's still around in virtual form. So if you're a female founder out in the world and looking for a community, One Roof, they're amazing people and they're incredibly supportive. I was lucky enough to be there at a time when they actually had a physical co-working space. And so I spent a lot of time with women. Ironically, some of the feedback we got from our early logo was that it was like a little too feminine. And we did actually sell primarily to women in the first year. I had some awkward sales conversations. One of them, a guy said to me, "Oh, so is your husband in the business with you?" I hadn't mentioned him. I have a ring on, but I hadn't mentioned my husband in the entire pitch. And so I was like, "Hey, bye, sir." I think I've been in technology for a long time. I've been the only tech woman at the table quite often. It's amazing to work with Braun. She's an incredible technologist, an incredible person, and I'm very lucky to have her as a co-founder. And so from that, so that was sort of the core team, and we've sort of grown here and there. We do actually hire men, and we do have 3 men on the team.
Fair, wonderful. And as is legally required, of course.
And we absolutely adore them. You'll interact with Sean if you are putting his support tickets.
Sean, I'm so sorry. I've interacted with Sean. He's wonderful as well.
Thank you. He's got long hair, so maybe, like... but no, and I think what you find, and when people talk about like diversity and stuff, I mean, like attracts like, and this is why tech bro companies are tech bro companies, and that is why my leadership team is all female. And we laugh sometimes, like if we were a group of male leaders, we would be criticized right now. But I figure we're just balancing the scales.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. Sure. But that being said, high hopes for the men of the world who we're going to be hiring and the leadership roles they'll be taking in our company. I promise you, there is no glass ceiling at YouLi for you. So, but yeah, I think also just being values driven, remote first, and flexible. So, Braun's a mom, and so she's got mom priorities, and we make sure that works. And that kind of mentality seems to resonate a little bit more with women at the moment, but I think it's definitely starting to resonate more and more with men as well. I think, the remote aspect of it is definitely
it's at least entered the conversation for sure. During the pandemic, obviously, especially that there's a special need for caretakers of babies, of elders, and just home responsibilities that the workplace should be aware of and should be flexible for any of their customers or employees.
Yeah, and it's challenging, don't get me wrong. It's like being empathetic and flexible takes energy and commitment and intention.
And resources very often.
Yeah. And so again, that's another reason why I think we chose not to go down the VC route, because it would have sort of put different kinds of pressures on the team. And so, again, being values aligned with our clients, I think was more important to us than sort of exponential growth at the cost of our staff, at the cost of potentially selling stuff to people that don't need it. We're really straightforward and honest about, look, these are the high-end plans, but if all you really need is to get started, then here you go. And we're very happy for people to be where they're at and to not kind of trick them into buying something that they don't want, which I think when you have some of those funding models. There's so much pressure to do that it's really hard to run a values aligned business.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I actually think that's a wonderful, like, full circle in this conversation of that it works for the tour operators, it works for the companies where tour operators are their clients. It's this idea of sustainable growth, right? Starting with a purpose, having an intention, which is that motivator, which will attract your clients to you and keep them because your values align. And then having that slow growth together. So there's nothing being forced. There's nothing trying to fit when it's not ready to fit in there yet. I think that's just a beautiful, like fit for everything in life, right? That philosophy and method.
I mean, think about what the world would be like if we all ran our businesses with intention and patience and, a desire for sustainable growth, but not necessarily exponential. If that comes to you and that's what you want, then that's great. But, as a forced thing, I think that's not actually success. So I think, and I see that with our clients so often. Many of them, they hit a point and they're like, no, I'm not going to get any bigger than this because I'm reaching the number of people that I want to reach, and I've created the life that I want to create. And, I think that's great too. So,
I love that.
So well done to all of you who are sort of living that dream and creating the businesses that are value aligned.
Yeah, agreed. Jen, thank you so much. Where can people find you if they have thoughts, they have comments, they want to ask you about YouLi?
Well, you can absolutely find me on LinkedIn. So Jen Fein. I think I'm one of like 2 or something.
Oh,
so
awesome.
And I've got Digital Nomad in my name, so you can find me really easily. I'm actually going to be at the Jordan ATTA event this week. Still on. And where else can you find me? Oh, yeah, go.uli.io. So check it out. You can book in demos with us there. And you can also just explore the platform for free. So I look forward to hearing what you guys think. We're always processing your feedback and always trying to get better based on what you need from us.
Thank you, Jen. I'll see you in Seville.